Welcome to 1623 Studios, Voter's Guide to the 2023 Gloucester Municipal Election. I'm Corey Kukru alongside Heather Atwood. Cape Ann today will be live from City Hall's Kairos Auditorium on election night with special interviews, voting results, and reactions. To help you prepare, our Voter's Guide has all the essential information you need for the election on November 7th.
We're going to profile each of the candidates and break down the races for mayor, at-large councilor, ward councilor, and school committee. We'll explain each of the officials' roles and respective duties, where to vote, how to vote, and what happens after your ballot is cast. And we'll discuss some of the bigger topics in this year's election.
We begin with 1623 Studios' policy regarding municipal elections. Our objective is to provide transparent, unbiased, comprehensive coverage. We do so by operating with the following core principles. Transparency. Our role is to document the election process as it unfolds, without editing or editorializing content. When possible, we provide live broadcast coverage so our community can observe events in real time. This is not always possible due to scheduling conflicts or technological constraints, such as poor internet access. Additionally, event hosts sometimes request that we record our coverage rather than broadcast live.
Accessibility. Our team strives to provide the best possible coverage of events to keep our community engaged and informed. Our coverage is available on Comcast Cable Television Channel 6, as well as 1623 Studios website and multiple online platforms, to reach as much of our community as possible.
Neutrality. 1623 Studios does not and will never endorse a specific candidate, party, or ballot measure. Our content is factual and does not include editorial opinions. We present events in their entirety without video or audio edits that could misrepresent facts.
As Cape Ann's public access station, your feedback is vital to our operation. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please contact us at info@1623studios.org.
Here now is the scope of 1623 Studios' election season coverage. Candidate statements. Every candidate is invited to 1623 Studios to record a statement of up to 4 minutes explaining their candidacy. This election season's candidate statements can be found on Channel 6 as well as 1623 Studios' YouTube channel. Note, some candidates did not respond to our request. Forums and debates. We aim to broadcast every single event held at various venues in Gloucester. Election night. We broadcast the Gloucester municipal election results and reaction live from Kairos Auditorium at City Hall on November 7th. Our coverage begins about an hour before the polls close at 8 p.m.
To help explain the processes and procedures of the municipal elections, we spoke with Gloucester City Clerk Joanne Sinos. Here is that interview in its entirety.
All right, folks, election season is upon us here in the city of Gloucester once again. And as always, Heather and I like to tap Joanne Sinos' shoulder to help us talk through the processes and the procedures. She is the city clerk for the city of Gloucester. Welcome back once again, Joanne.
Thank you for having me today.
Thanks for being here with us. So, all right, we've already passed through the preliminaries. It's a different election season now. We're coming off at least the last one we did with you was through COVID,
Yes.
which was very different. What is it like this year preparing for the election season? I remember the last time we talked, it was all about the mail-in ballots and early voting, and that's changed a lot.
Yes, it has. So in the local election this year, we are not required to have early voting in person. Okay, we are required to have vote by mail for the local elections, and the city clerk's office was not required to send out notices for vote by mail or send out applications unless a voter requested it, or as we registered people to vote through our system, through our queue, we include with their acknowledgement notice that they're a registered voter, a vote by mail application. It seems like this year is different. The preliminary election, even though I put a notice out that vote by mail was not required for us to be mailed to the voter. It was up to the voter to request the application, and they could apply online, send it by fax, email. And so we found that in the preliminary election, it was a low request. We had less than 200 voters request absentee and vote by mail. Okay, and then as of today, the number is less than 200 also between absentee and vote by mail.
Wow, and we're recording this in late September, folks, too. So wow.
Yeah. So I think it's a little different than COVID. I think a lot more people took advantage of the vote by mail due to COVID. But the election work to get the prep work is still the same on that. And also, I did want to mention early in the year, I don't know if you remember, there was a option for the city to opt out of vote by mail, and the city council voted not to do that, which was fine with me. Either way, we'll do the work on that. So, unfortunately, the percentage was a little lower for the preliminary election than the past 2 years.
It was 18.5% turnout.
A little bit over 18. I think it was 18.79. And then 2 years ago, it was over 28%.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but I find in my years doing elections that preliminary cities or state primaries, the voters, we don't have the percentage come out for some reason. Whatever reason, the voters, sometimes they just want to vote to see who's on the ballot in November.
Yeah, and it could be a few other things, right? It's still
It could be,
summertime.
yes.
People are getting their kids ready to get back to school. There aren't any debates or anything really happening. There aren't a lot of forums beforehand. But also, there are a lot of races. There's only one uncontested race this time around in Ward 5. So maybe that'll up the numbers come November 7th.
And I'm hoping, but I think it will, because we've been getting a lot of inquiries about debates. And we're not involved in debates, so we try to give the information out to, if we know, we kind of mention if someone calls that they want to do a debate, we ask for their name and number so that we can give, that person the name and number, or who's the group who's holding it, to watch out on Facebook or in the newspaper about the debates.
Interesting.
So I think there's a lot of interest right now on debates.
Yeah, and there isn't a requirement. Does there have to be a debate for each? Not really, right? It's just whether it's set up or not?
Yeah, not through the city clerk's office.
So I want to ask about preliminary elections, because I happen to think that primaries and preliminaries are probably really important in selecting the candidates, but maybe not so much in municipal ones. Why does Gloucester need a preliminary election?
It's required by our city charter. So we're required to hold a preliminary.
And that is
if needed, yes.
If there are more than two options for that seat. Is that what the charter says?
The charter says for the mayor, if it's more than two. For ward councilor, if it's more than two. Councilor at large, it has to be more than 8. Okay, and school committee has to be more than 6.
Right.
And they do cost quite a bit.
They do.
Right.
It's getting more and more expensive to hold the elections. And I think there's been some inquiries on public records request on how much each election cost, because I think some people are looking to rank choice to see whether to push the rank choice. As you remember, that failed on a state ballot. It did. So.
Yeah, and we should also say too that the city charter is revisited every year that ends in a 0, right? Basically.
Yes, that is only for minor changes or revisions. Okay. Anything to do with term limits or elections would have to go through a charter revision process.
Gotcha. Because it's every 2 years.
It is.
It comes around fast.
It is. And we've getting inquiries on how come a local election can't be with the state election. So you can have 1 year off, but it's every 2 years local, then there's state, then there's federal. So we have an election every year.
Yeah, you have no vacations.
No, not in the fall, especially in the fall.
Yeah.
So, Joanne, one big story that happened this year was the redistricting of wards 1 and 2.
Yes.
So can you just kind of walk us through how that came about and how that actually works?
Okay. So what happens every 2 years after the federal census is complete, new ward and precinct boundaries are drawn to reflect the changes of the city population. And each precinct cannot have more than 4,000 inhabitants.
Oh.
Okay. So in order to make it equal, the state, after the federal census, draws up a map, and we look at it, and then there's ward lines that change, okay, according to the population. So what happened, it seems like the last federal census, most of the changes was in the Ward 1 and Ward 2, especially Ward 2, which changed the ward lines on that. So that's how it comes about to change the ward in precinct.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating because they can literally just move a couple streets over.
They can. I can just give you an example for me where I live. I started at 4-2. I went to 4-1. Then I went to 3-2. And now I'm back to 4-1 again.
That's very funny.
So it does change. Sometimes it might not affect you at all. Right. So, but that's how that came about. And I think also too, there was a lot of attention to this re-precincting because of COVID. It pushed the deadline back. Because usually what happens in pre-COVID, it was by June of the previous year for a local election, you would know where your ward lines are. But since we didn't get the information till August, the city council didn't vote until October on that. So it affected, of course, one of the ward councilors.
Yeah, and I live in Ward 1, and now all of Ward 1 is going to the new East Veterans School to vote now.
Yes.
Well, that wasn't the same 2 years ago. They were still, we were at the YMCA.
You were at the YMCA, and the only reason you were at the YMCA is because of the new school being built. And according to the law for cities, you cannot move a ward and precinct unless it touches another adjacent ward and precinct. So what happens, the closest one would have been Ward 2, okay, which is the YMCA. And I was trying to find places to fit everybody. And of course, Ward 2 is at Our Ladies, and you couldn't put another 2 wards and precincts in there. So we had, thanks to former Councilor Melissa Cox and President Councilor Scott Memhar, they work with the YMCA for an MOU to move the polling location to, even though it's in Ward 2, but it touches the line, to the YMCA. So that kind of worked out well.
Right.
Since now the new school is built and then the East Gloucester School is closed, which was a polling place, East Gloucester has always been school, that Ward 1-1 has always been a challenge because it doesn't touch any other ward lines except for 1-2. Okay. So what happened is that the logical place would be to put it in the new school, which is the 1-2 line, or else we would have to go get special legislation to move it outside of the ward. Okay. So, and then taking into consideration the Ward 1-2 residents, we only, Councilor Memhard and I had a discussion that we thought it was only fair to have people vote in their ward like everybody else does. So that's why we brought the 1-2 back to the new school.
Yep, and I voted there a little while back, and it's easy to delineate each precinct and go, go this way or you go this way.
We're going to tweak that a little bit to make it the flow a little more because I got the feedback from the poll workers. So we're going to tweak it a little. I mean, it'd be the same setup, but more signage, more crowd control type things. So because some people are confused on which way to go. So yeah.
So Joanne, you just recently decided, or you personally didn't, but you went through the process of deciding what order people are on the ballot. Could you tell what goes into that process?
Okay, so it's per the city charter, and what it is that the order in which the names of the candidates appear on the ballot for each office is determined by a drawing by lot conducted by the city clerk in the presence of the representatives or the candidates themselves. So it's city charter plus Mass General Law too.
So Joanne, are they really on little pieces of paper?
They're on strips of paper. The names are typed in, and what I usually do is I announce all the names before they put it in this little box, and we shake it up, and I put my hand in it, and I start drawing out the names, and I say everything out loud on the order, and my assistant writes down the order that I write the names of the candidates of, so that when I go to order the ballots, I program it into the order that is going to appear in November.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, it's an old-fashioned way, but that's what's in the charter, it's in the Mass General Law, and that's what we do.
Cave drawing age. But we will be able to see the ballot in advance. It will be published in the Gloucester Times, I think, right?
We usually put it on our website. If you go to the elections page, that has all the specimen ballots and all the past elections specimen ballots, the results and everything. So we put it on there. We don't usually put it on the news flash, city's front page. The only notice I put there is the important dates that are coming up for deadlines. On that. But once we get the ballots, right now, I already sent in everything to be programmed. They're going to send me PDFs of the ballots. Once I proof them and everything, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll be ordering the ballots. The company that we go to, the turnaround time was quick, but we didn't have that many contested races. For the preliminary election, so this one is going to be a full ballot, so it might take a little longer than a week and a half.
Gotcha.
To get the ballots in.
Okay. And Joanna, I know we ask you this all the time,
Sure.
but walk us through the process of I put my ballot in the machine,
Yes.
then what happens to it? From my ward precinct to City Hall for the final tabulation.
Okay, so you're going to put your ballot into the machine, it's going to get counted, okay? I don't know the feedback, if you like the new machine or not.
It worked for me.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. I think it's simpler. The voter can see that big screen that it's been counted. Okay. So that goes through the process all day. And then at the end of the night, what happens is that at 8 o'clock when they announce the polls are closed, the warden and the constable will open up the tabulator and press that button to close the polls. Okay. Once that button is pressed, then the tabulator will start printing 3 election result tapes, okay? And then what happens is that there's a memory stick that has all the tabulation of all the votes for that day. I appoint office staff and also volunteers to go out to the polls before they close, to be there so that they can bring back 1 copy of the election results tape, plus the memory stick, so that we could read the results and upload it to the reporting system that we have that goes with the tabulator. So once those come in, it gets by precinct, ward and precinct. What we do is we just upload it to a reporting system. Once all the memory sticks come back and they're uploaded, I'm able to report an unofficial summary report and an unofficial ward and precinct report. And that's how the unofficial results come in at the end of the night.
And what makes them unofficial?
Because we have hand counts, okay? If we have ballots that come in, just say 5 minutes of 8, okay, that come into the city clerk's office, we put them in the system that we received them, but we don't have time to bring them out to the precincts to be put through the tabulator, because by the time someone gets out there, the polls will have already been closed. So that is considered a hand count. Overseas voters who are eligible, they can get an e-ballot. And so what happens, if that e-ballot comes in before 8 o'clock, that is also a hand count. Okay, and then also we have to wait for all the wards and precincts to come back with their ballots and the supplies and everything, and they might be provisional ballots that someone was allowed to vote provisionally. So that's why they're called unofficial results, because they're not the final results.
All right. Well, and one thing I want to mention too, Joanne, is a lot of volunteers are helping, especially at the polling precincts on November 7th. If folks want to get involved and participate in this somehow, how can they go about doing that?
They're not volunteers. They're paid poll workers. Okay. So all they have to do is contact the city clerk's office, and what we do is we give them a packet which explains the different duties of the poll workers. You can be a constable, warden, clerk, or an inspector, and what those duties are, the hours, because some people don't know that it's a long day, especially if they want to do that, what's expected of them, what their duties are, each position, what they have to do. We are finding too that as the turnover goes, that people have been doing for a long time, it's a long day for them. We offer full shifts or half shifts, okay? And sometimes the half shifts do work out better because you have fresh eyes, especially at the end of the night. So all they have to do is contact us. We will give them a packet and tell them to read it. And if they're interested, fill out all the information we need in order to get them on as a poll worker.
And does a poll worker, if she or he is going to work at one of the precincts, is it a precinct that she or he lives in?
Not necessarily. Okay, they try to request, working at a poll where they live in close, so because at the end of the night, they just want to go home. We try to do that, but sometimes it's not possible. We just fill in wherever we need people. And we do have our regulars that come back, which I'm very grateful for. So
I was just going to say that if you are working a poll in the precinct that you live in, you might end up chatting to too many neighbors.
Yes, that's true. That's
kind
true.
of a hazard.
Yeah, it is, and I've found in visiting the precincts too is that people haven't seen each other for a long time, so they want to do catch-up time, but that is not the time to do it.
Dangerously close to a bake sale maybe there too. So. All right, Joanne, thank you so much again for your time. We really appreciate it. Good luck through November 7th.
Thank you.
Heather and I will send you on vacation November 8th.
I wish
Until
I
then,
could.
yeah, back to work. So.
Stay rested, hydrate, keep your
Yes.
phone charged, all those things they say.
Okay, thank you very much. It was nice seeing you today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to 1623 Studios' Voter's Guide to the 2023 Gloucester Municipal Election. On September 28th, we spoke with Gloucester Times reporter Ethan Foreman to discuss this election season's biggest issues and topics. Here is that interview in its entirety.
Election 2023 continues. We are here with Ethan Foreman of the Gloucester Daily Times to help walk us through some of the big issues and topics that folks are facing as we careen towards November 7th. How are you, Ethan?
Yeah, that's a tall order. I don't know, but it's election season in Gloucester is in full swing. So I think the big thing facing voters is the mayor's race.
Right. And yeah, a lot of races this time around, only one uncontested race. But yeah, right off the top, it's Greg Verga versus Mary Ellen Rose. What your feelings on it, and what have you gathered so far from the preliminary to this point in late September about, it's sort of a grassroots campaign that Mary Ellen's running. Greg's only been in office for about a year, just over a year and a half now. A lot of things are going on. Your thoughts?
Well, I think, I was talking to someone today about how the mayor, in their first term, for their first year, are trying to figure out the job, work on issues that were lingering from the prior administration. So when you think about a mayor that's got to run every 2 years, they really only have a year to get things done, and then you're kind of a little bit in campaign mode. So I think that's what is facing Greg Verga right now. He's going to run on his record, and now he has a challenger. And I think one of the interesting things about the challenger was Mary Ellen Rose. She was somebody who worked in his administration. And that wasn't really touched upon in the preliminary election. So I'm wondering how much that is going to become an issue moving forward, because it's in my opinion, it's a decision process. You've hired somebody, and then they didn't work out, and now they're running for your job. So I wonder if that is going to be an issue in the mayor's race, if that's going to be more highlighted. It really didn't come out in the preliminary election with Tracy O'Neill and Francisco Sclafani. So that to me might be an emphasis.
Right, and you would imagine with so many forums and debates scheduled over the next 4 to 6 weeks that the head-to-head, we could see some fireworks there.
Yeah, and I don't know whether it's fireworks, but I think maybe that the issue gets fleshed out a little bit more as far as, we'll see.
So Ethan, What do you think are the big issues that whoever wins the mayoral race, what are they looking at in the next 2 years? What are the issues in the city that this new mayor will, or the incumbent will have to address?
I think, and what I think came out of the preliminary and issues there was, there's been a lot of talk about housing and that conundrum. Not just affordable housing, but just the creation of more housing. The MBTA communities issue is a big thing for Gloucester, wrestling with having to create a district of 2,270 units with that kind of capacity. I think it's scared a lot of people. There's some people in the city who say maybe we shouldn't go along with the state law. There's obviously this is a mandated law. The mayor has said that they're going to try to comply. So I think that's going to be a big issue. Climate change too, resiliency. What will the mayoral candidates bring to the table on that? The mayor has hired a resiliency coordinator, and we'll see what Mary Ellen has to offer on that topic. And the other thing that really hasn't come up, or maybe has come up on the side, is what is the future of the fishing industry? We talk a lot about maybe other ways of creating a blue economy, but we have still have a very vibrant fishing community, and it'll be interesting to see how the harbor plan moves forward. So I'm hoping to hear a little bit more about that.
Mm-hmm. And another contentious topic lately too is the mayor is also part of school committee, and we have this big battle between the paraprofessionals and the school committee that's ongoing as well.
Yeah, I think we'll see if it gets worked out before then. The mayor has two hats in this. It's a very tricky issue, and we'll see if it becomes an issue in the election. I don't know. It could be solved tomorrow.
Where do we stand with that? Where does the school committee stand?
Well, the school committee has asked for mediation. The paraprofessionals have been asking for a living wage, and they're saying that they're asking the school committee to come back to the table. And I think there has been I saw something on Facebook about the mayor wanting to meet. I think they met last night when this is being taped in this kind of as a whole to try to talk about this. So there's movement there. Like I said, if this gets solved, will it become an issue in the election? It remains to be seen, because it could be the contract could be finalized, and then then it would become an issue of how did the mayor do on this issue? Because again, he's wearing two hats. He's the city side. He's on the school committee. So it's a conundrum. My sense is everyone has been saying that the paraprofessionals should have an increase in pay, and I think eventually, that will be the issue. But so again, it could be solved, and it doesn't become an issue, but then it could be an issue.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we are recording this late September. Is today the 27th? September 27th or something?
Yeah, so that's why it's like I'm just hedging.
Yep, gotcha.
So let's just run through the ballot. Tell us, what do you think are the big issues for the city council in the next 2 years? And you could start with councilor at large and move through wards. What maybe there are issues within the wards. But let's start with councilor at large.
Well, it's sort of in my opinion. I think one of the things that I've been seeing is a lot of dysfunction on the council. Unfortunately, a lot of issues have been getting blown up, and there's been a lot of rancor on the council. The meeting that we had held, recently featured a debate about councilors approaching city inspectors and how that was handled, and how there's this kind of inability to talk about it and procedure and how people are obeying the rules of order. And so the council was on Zoom for many years. It's now back in person. And I think that might be an issue for the council moving forward. And I think that would be an issue for councilors to ask about, what has been the breakdown? Do they perceive a breakdown? I think there has been. So the council is going to change. We know Tracy O'Neill was redistricted. She was allowed to run, and she won. And but she is not running for. She's now in Ward 1. Friend Street, I believe, is in Ward 1, and I believe that she's going to, she ran for mayor, so she's off the council, unfortunately. I wish her the best of luck. And so you're going to have a new face on the council anyway. So Ward 2, if you want to break down the race a little bit, it seems like a generational shift on Ward 2. Barry Pett, who's been very active in the community, voters did not send him back. He was the predecessor for Tracy O'Neill. So you have a generation shift. You have Dylan Benson, who's a guy about 31 years old. He works for the city of Beverly in the law department. And you have Daniel Epstein, I believe PhD at Harvard University, working with academics who were displaced in Ukraine. This is very interesting now. You have this sort of generational shift in Ward 2.
Really, right?
Yeah,
young kids.
younger guys. So I think that's where you get that. Ward 3 is Joseph R. Orlando, his former city councilor, is going against Marjorie Grace, who I met, and seems like somebody who wants to get involved and wants to raise their voice. So that's going to be an interesting race. I'm not handicapping any of these races.
Right.
No, right.
Ward 4 is interesting too. Frank Margiotta, who is a Ward 3 councilor, moved into Ward 4. Now, the city charter allows you to serve out the rest of your term. Now he's running for Ward 4. And he's running against Mary Pat DeRosa. So I think a lot of people know her in the city. I will get acquainted with her. So we'll see how an incumbent councilor living in a new ward in Lanesville.
An award represented by the council president.
Yeah, so it's musical chairs.
Right.
Val Gilman, former school committee member, longtime councilor in Ward 4, and she's taken the leap to try to be an at-large councilor.
Right. So she actually has. Those are big shoes to fill in Ward 4, I would think.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Definitely. I mean, I think that whoever emerges. It'll be tough. So Frank is going against Mary Pat DeRosa. So on the ballot, so in the preliminary, there weren't enough candidates to trigger a runoff and council at large. So maybe we just talk about who is running. Can we just
And just to button up the wards. Sean Nolan is the only councilor in Ward 5 running unopposed.
Yeah, Sean. I don't know. He drew the short stick. No, I don't know. But no. And then Ward 1 race is interesting too. Marianne Albert Boucher, who is a frequent commenter in city council meetings. She raises issues on the fields and in East Gloucester. Is running against Scott Memhard, who's a very known quantity, Cape Pond Ice. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Again, I'm relatively new to Gloucester. I really can't tell you. Perhaps the issues in Ward 1 might revolve around the closing of the school, the East Gloucester, and what the future of that site is going to be. That's going to be a critical part of the city. It's going to be open space. How that's handled could be an issue in the race.
Interesting.
So
Ethan, in your time reporting here, especially now that we're in full swing for election season, what do you find the voters and the constituents? What seems to be the most important issues to them this time around?
Well, I think that's a difficult question. I think there's a lot of angst about development and the changing nature of Gloucester, and what are we going to do about the I-4C2 parcel on Rogers Street? How is that going to be developed? People have proposed a performing arts center, but then people are saying, no, it should be more marine focused. So you can see the concern about the properties on the wharf becoming condos or hotels. I think there's an angst in the city about that. Tourism is vital to the city, but a lot of the tourist influx and that kind of population, the housing stock gets taken up by Airbnbs. That concern. So housing overdevelopment, I think the city is wrestling with that. That's the sort of the angst I feel like in the city. You know, I could be wrong, but that was a big driver of the discussion around zoning amendments last year, and I think it's sort of carried over. But you know, we'll see. You know.
And the MBTA development, that feels like that's just a tinderbox in the city.
Yeah, you know, and you know, we'll see how the mayoral candidates address that. You know, it's a huge issue for the city, but in some sense, it's just creating a zoning overlay district, and property owners have every right not to develop their property. So, you know. I was wondering if did you want to talk about who's running at large for city council, because I feel like those are
Exactly.
yeah. So we have Jamie O'Hara. He's been on for about 8 years. Chris Carranza is it would be a new face on the council, but not a new face as far as Gloucester, because he was an aide to former mayor Safadia Romeo Tekin. So. It's interesting. Jeff Worthley, who was on the council in the early 2000s, is running for he's running for at large again. And who else is running at large? Val Gilman, of course, who is giving up. I don't know if it's a safe seat in Ward 4, but she is taking that leap. Jason Crow. I think who's been on the council before is running for his second consecutive term, and Tony Gross, who is someone who was on the Waterways Board for a long time and a long-time school committee member. So there's a lot of experience as far as. Who's running? Did I get everybody? No, I'm gonna get.
Worthley, did you mention Jeff?
I mentioned Jeff
Okay.
because he had been on the council before,
Right, okay.
and then he came back. Now
So there are 4 seats and there's 6 people running. Do I have that right?
I think so.
Okay, so
Exactly.
it's possible that an incumbent is no longer in that. Actually, it's possible that 2 incumbents are no longer there.
Yeah, and again, I would be hesitant at this point to handicap this race. I am actually hesitant to handicap any race. You know, you got a chance, whatever your percentage is, you know.
Well, even looking back 2 years ago, Tracy O'Neill upset Barry Pett by 2 votes at the end of the day.
2 votes.
you know?
And Barry was forthright in his candidate interview for the preliminary election. He had been sick.
Yeah.
And he couldn't campaign. So is there a desire for change in Ward 2? The voters have already shown that they're sending 2 younger people to represent them.
Yeah. They've got a big school in their backyard now too.
Yeah.
Over there, so lots of change lately. So yeah, it's kind of, I think it's November 7th is going to be absolutely fascinating around here. I was just surprised how many people are running for all these different positions. I don't know if things might have calmed down a bit from 2 years ago, but it hasn't. Things have ramped up. I think that the whole election season is going to be quite interesting with all the forums and debates when we see who's standing for what and why they're running.
There's another component to this. We've been talking about the contract for paraprofessionals.
Yes.
There's a race for school committee.
Yes.
So that's going to be interesting. So incumbent Kathleen Clancy, she's just present chair. Also a newcomer, Jeremy Mark McKean, is also running. Bill Melvin is running for his seat again. Keith Allen Minio, another member. Melissa Joyce Shara Prince, a well-known member of the school committee, who almost didn't run a couple years ago, but has come back. Yeah. She's represents budget and finance issues on the school committee, and a Richard John Roberts Jr. And Laura Wiesen as well. Now Samantha Watson didn't decline to run, so there will be a new face on the school committee.
Right.
School committee, in a cursory look at the school committee, I've been to a lot of the meetings, but they seem to work well together. So we'll see what the voters voters say, what issues on the schools might be, school performance might be an issue. I hear a lot about that where they say Gloucester kids should do better, but again, they got a brand new school and it's a beautiful new school. I know they had some issues with it recently, but beautiful facility. So that school committee does not have to face that moving forward. The combination of two schools.
It really feels to me like we're just like shaking up the whole city. I mean, with Val moving to councilor at large, with Frank Margiotta moving to her ward, two new faces there, brand new faces in Ward 2. It just feels like there's a lot of question marks.
Well, I mean, you have the potential for most of the council to turn over.
Right.
That's what you're seeing. So if the incumbents lose, and that's like I say, 50-50 chance when you're running in these kind of races.
So Ethan, let me ask you this. So how does election season play out for you as a reporter? I mean, obviously a lot of debates and forums to cover. Is the Times part of any of the hosting debates or anything like that?
Well, I think at the time we're talking about this, it's late September, and we haven't really done any sort of planning. I really envision writing about the races and doing some candidate profiles, but we haven't planned that out.
Gotcha. Do you get requests because we've gotten requests to host debates and forums, which we sort of steer clear from?
Well, I'm hoping that there's an organization that comes forward and does a debate. It was very well done by the League of Women Voters. They had taped interviews, and I think that allowed candidates to have a long form presentation. But the best way to really flesh out candidates is our debate. So we'll see what organizations can come forward and do that. It's too soon for me to say what our planning is going to be for coverage.
Gotcha.
I just have one last question. You did cover the preliminary forum. Do you want to just tell us what you could take away from this election season, from what you saw in the audience and just the mood of that forum? How about questions in the audience? There's a lot of questioning.
I think there were
right?
like a lot of.
And there you have it, folks. So yeah, the roller coaster is about to take off here.
We're learning on like this now. The other thing is, I just make note. It was a very low turnout. In Ward 2, it was very low turnout. And so if we can make a plea to anyone who's watching this, please vote, because you have a big say in who is going to run the city for the next 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that how tight these elections actually are. I think it was 18.79% turned out for the preliminary vote. Which was 11 or 12% lower than 2 years ago. But we could see some big numbers now on the 7th. There are some big races and big names and former names getting back in the ring again. So we'll see.
Well, it depends on how tuned in people are. So I was kind of just a little bit discouraged that the turnout was so low, especially in Ward 2, where we've been hearing a lot of heat.
Right. And the audience in that preliminary forum seemed really, excited, so.
But it's
yeah, and we spoke with Joanne Sinos a little while ago. It's still summertime. People are still getting kids ready for school. There isn't a whole lot of discussion before the preliminary vote, so it kind of hits people sort of quickly, but who knows? We'll see. But in the meantime, Ethan, we'll be in touch with you to help guide us through election season here in Gloucester. Should be pretty fascinating. So we appreciate your time, and we'll be in touch with you sooner than later.
Thank you. Thank you, Corey. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. It's great to see you in person, as always.
Thank you.
You're watching 1623 Studios' Voter's Guide to the 2023 Gloucester Municipal Election. Now, a quick look at Gloucester's population, according to the most recent information from the United States Census Bureau in July of 2022. Gloucester's population is 29,836. There are 23,026 registered voters, 1,209 veterans. 24.5% of the population is over 65, 16.1% is under 18, 4.9% is under 5, and 9.6% is foreign-born.
The median household income in Gloucester is $82,984 per year. 62.7% of the housing is owner-occupied. Median value of owner-occupied housing is $460,000. The median gross rental is $1,256. 9.3% live in poverty.
With Election Day fast approaching, here is what is already transpired this election season. The preliminary election was September 19th to decide the top 2 candidates for mayor, Ward 2 councilor, and Ward 3 councilor in the November election. Any registered voter was eligible to run for office. There were 4,226 ballots cast out of 23,026 registered voters, a turnout of just under 19%.
In the mayor's race, incumbent Greg Verga received 46% of the vote, 1,928 votes. Mary Ellen Rose received 34% of the vote, 1,434. Tracy O'Neill received 19% of the vote, 820. And Francisco Sclafani received less than 1% of the vote, 25. There were 8 write-ins. Greg Verga and Mary Ellen Rose advanced to the November 7th election.
In the Ward 2 race, Dylan Benson received 40% of the vote. Daniel Epstein received 26% of the vote. Barry Pett received 17% of the vote. Donald Jedis received 15.5% of the vote. There were 2 write-ins. Dylan Benson and Daniel Epstein advanced to the November 7th election.
In the Ward 3 race, Joseph Orlando received 39% of the vote. Marjorie Grace received 31% of the vote. Jason Hakes received 29% of the vote, and there were 6 write-ins. Joseph Orlando and Marjorie Grace advanced to the November 7th election.
The stage is now set for Election Day on November 7th with 2 candidates running for mayor, 6 candidates running for 4 at-large councilor seats, 7 candidates running for 6 school committee seats, and 9 candidates running for ward councilor, with only 1 candidate running unopposed.
Per city charter, candidates serve 2-year terms. Let's learn about the duties performed by mayor, at-large councilor, city councilor, and school committee, and then we will introduce you to this year's candidates. First, the role of Mayor of Gloucester.
What does the mayor do? The mayor is the executive branch of city government. According to the city charter, the term begins on the first secular day of January following the election. Among other duties, the mayor must make appointments to city offices, including department heads and boards, police chief and fire chief, but they must all be confirmed by the city council. Act as a 7th member of the school committee and the coordinator for the school committee with other city departments, and create a budget and present it to city council for approval.
But mayors have help. As the charter says, the mayor shall within 60 days appoint a chief administrative officer who is professionally qualified as a municipal administrator by virtue of training, education, or experience. That person may prepare and administer the annual budget, manage capital outlay programs. Basically, the CAO can do anything in the mayor's direction, at the mayor's direction, except appoint and terminate city officers or veto city council decisions. Mayor Greg Verga's CAO is Jill Cahill.
So, who is running for mayor? The incumbent is Greg Verga, who defeated Safathia Romeo Taken in 2021 by a margin of 59% to 41%, with just over 10,000 ballots cast, a turnout of just over 45%. The challenger is Mary Ellen Rose. This is her first bid for mayor of Gloucester. Verga and Rose defeated outgoing Ward 2 councilor Tracy O'Neill and longtime mayoral candidate Francisco Sclafani in the preliminary election on September 19th. Let's take a closer look at the candidates with information sourced from their campaign websites and/or literature. This is the order they appear on the November 7th ballot.
Who is Mary Ellen Rose? She has worked in the health sciences for more than 40 years as an educator, scientist, consultant, and published academic. She has employed her subject matter expertise at corporate, medical, government, military, religious, municipal, and nonprofit entities across the United States and in the global organizations. Employers have included the U.S. Department of State, Department of Defense's Defense Health Agency, Northeast Hospital System, Kaiser Permanente, the New England Insurance, and others. She has received many recommendations and other awards for outstanding contributions and leadership efforts in both professional and volunteer capacities. She has worked as an American Red Cross volunteer for 10 years in the DC area.
Who is Greg Verga? Verga worked for several years in the manufacturing and tech industries before becoming a licensed real estate agent in 2005. He's a former school committee member, Ward 5 city councilor, and councilor at large. He served 8 years on the school committee and 6 years on city council. Here are points that mark his first term as mayor. He negotiated $5 million payment from the state towards a renovation of the police station and district court. He earmarked $10 million of the $23 million the city received in COVID local recovery funds from the American Rescue Plan Act towards upgrading the sewer treatment plant. He hired a full-time climate sustainability coordinator. The mayor is also promoting free home energy audits. He directed ARPA funds to complete new playgrounds at Plum Cove and Beeman Elementary Schools. The New East Veterans Elementary School was completed on time and on budget.
The mayor also supplemented the fiscal year 2022 paving budget by $300,000 and increased the fiscal year 2023 pothole budget by 480%. The new reservation program to manage beach traffic has reduced traffic and increased revenues. He has pushed forward the effort to renovate and expand the Sawyer Free Library, a project that was unanimously supported by the City Council. And he has revitalized the Affordable Housing Trust and directed tax receipts from short-term rental fees to the trust to deliver a continual funding source. He has directed $1.5 million from the ARPA funds to the trust, and he has begun the process for a new master plan to replace the previous plan from 2001.
Now, the race for City Council. What is the City Council? The council is the legislative branch of city government. There are 9 members, 5 ward councilors elected by their ward, 1 for each ward, and 4 councilors at large elected by the voters. They are elected to 2-year terms held every 2 years in odd-numbered years. They are responsible for the enactment of the city laws.
Among other duties, City Council meets on the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays of each month at 7 p.m. in City Hall. It confirms the mayor's appointments, approves the mayor's proposed annual budget, and the council also has 3 standing committees, each comprised of 3 members: Budget and Finance, Ordinances and Administration, Planning and Development. The standing committees hold regular public meetings to consider the matters referred to them by the council.
Let's meet the candidates for at-large councilor. At-large councilors serve the entire city, whereas ward councilors serve specific subdivisions of Gloucester. There are 6 candidates seeking 4 at-large seats. Voters can choose up to 4. Here they are in ballot order. Jeffrey T. Worthley, incumbent. Worthley is running for a 2nd consecutive term as councilor at large, but served 4 years on the city council from 2001 to 2005. He also ran for mayor in 2005 and 2007. He serves on the Budget and Finance Standing Committee. Worthley grew up in Gloucester and currently works in financial services.
Jason M. Groh, incumbent. Groh is running for a 2nd consecutive term as councilor at large. He is currently chair of the Planning and Development Standing Committee. He already served as Ward 1 councilor for 2 terms. Groh has worked for 30 years as a professional magazine and corporate photographer and photojournalist. As chair of the Planning and Development Standing Committee, Groh addressed changes to the inclusionary zoning ordinance and supported the Housing Production Plan zoning amendments, which, had they passed, would have facilitated the creation of new 2- and 3-family homes throughout the city. This was intended to ensure that all neighborhoods had some responsibility for the city's housing needs.
Christopher DiMercurio Sicaranza. He was the interim CAO for Mayor Romeo Taken in 2021. In 2022, he became the Chief of Staff in Haverhill, Mass., and then Chief of Staff in Salem in 2023. He has been the Gloucester Democratic City Committee Ward 3 Chair and served on various Gloucester City boards, including the Gloucester Licensing Board, Special Events Committee, Discover Gloucester, DMO, Committee for the Arts, Gloucester Green. In 2016, Sikaranza was the first Director of Communications and Constituent Services for the City of Gloucester.
Valerie Gilman. She is currently the 5-time counselor for Ward 4 and is running for the first time for counselor at large. She's currently the president of the City Council. She's the vice chair of the Planning and Development Standing Committee. She's been on the Planning and Development Standing Committee for 8 years and chaired it for 4. She was recently nominated to join the Massachusetts Municipal Association's Women Elected Municipal Officials Steering Committee, which works to promote the leadership of women officials statewide and sponsors programming focused on issues its members raise. She served on the school committee from 2007 to 2013 as member, vice chair, and then chair.
Tony M. Gross, incumbent. Tony's seeking his second consecutive term as counselor at large. He's the current vice chair of the Budget and Finance Standing Committee. This is his 12th year on the Waterways Board and 7 years as the chair. He serves on Gloucester's Master Harbor Plan Committee. He takes credit for securing $1.6 million in funding for the Visiting Boating Center. He is the cultural representative for ARPA funds listening sessions. He served 13 years on the Gloucester School Committee, 6 years as chair of their Building and Finance Committee. And he is also a retired fisherman.
James W. O'Hara, Jr., incumbent. O'Hara is running for a 5th consecutive term. He is the owner and president of O'Hara Industrial Services, LLC. He helped launch and has headed Gloucester's grassroots group, Citizens for Public Safety. O'Hara has previously served on the Magnolia Library and Community Center Board.
And here are the candidates running for ward councilor. And keep in mind, each ward gets its own ballot featuring the candidates for that ward only. Wards are determined by population between major roads and waterways. There are approximately 6,000 people per ward in Gloucester. Here are the candidates for Ward 1. Mary Ann Boucher. Boucher and her husband own a construction company in Gloucester. She worked for the Gloucester Public School System, both in the classroom and as the City of Gloucester Substitute Coordinator. She was president of the Mount Pleasant Cemetery Association in Ward 1, vice president of the Cape Ann Figure Skating Club, and fundraising coordinator for East Gloucester Elementary School. She has 20 years of experience as an administrative assistant to the president of a home inspection firm and was a sales rep for multiple home furnishing manufacturers.
Scott Memhard, incumbent. He was elected Ward 1 City Councilor in 2015 and has served 4 consecutive terms, running for his 5th. He has been president of Cape Pond Ice Company for 40 years. He served 8 years on the Budget and Finance Subcommittee and is now chair. Memhard was director and board president of Sawyer Free Library, the Gloucester Unitarian Universalist Church, and the Cape Ann Chamber of Commerce. He has served on the boards of Maritime Gloucester, Cape Ann Commercial Fishermen's Loan Fund, the Phyllis A. Marine Association, and the Gloucester Fisheries Commission. Memhard has worked with residents to repave private roads through the Betterment Paving Program, including Haskell Court, Hart Street, Harrison Avenue, Bass Avenue, and Thatcher Road.
Ward 2. Due to redistricting, current councilor Tracy O'Neill could not run for Ward 2 re-election. Her home address fell into the newly shaped Ward 1. Instead, she ran in the mayoral preliminary race and lost, finishing 3rd behind Greg Verga and Mary Ellen Rose. Here are the candidates for Ward 2. Dylan Benson. Benson works in the City of Beverly's legal department. He earned his high school equivalency diploma in 2012, a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Justice from Salem State University in 2017, a Master of Science in Criminal Justice from Anna Marie College in 2019, and Master's Certificate from Northeastern University in 2021. His take on the MBA communities issue, I quote, "I believe we have to follow the law. That is what I've read from the actual MBTA Communities Act law and then reading the Attorney General's opinion. But also I believe that we can do this in a way that respects the neighborhoods, the unique character of our neighborhoods."
Daniel Epstein. Epstein holds a doctorate in government from Harvard University. He works as the assistant director of the Scholars Without Borders program at Harvard University, which supports scholars affected by the war in Ukraine. He has served on the Gloucester Board of Registrars, and he's worked as a field organizer for Senator Bernie Sanders in 2016. On the MBTA communities issue, Epstein said, quote, "I think it's an issue that we really have to find some way to confront in a way that will help Gloucester be more affordable for families. I don't think that we can take the cookie-cutter legislation that was provided and provide exactly that, a single large, very dense zoning parcel in downtown Gloucester."
Here are the candidates for Ward 3. Marjorie Grace. Grace calls Ward 3 the gateway to Gloucester. I quote, "There's 3 ways to get into Gloucester, 4 if you count the ocean, and all 3 of them come through Ward 3. So every decision that is made in this city affects Ward 3. She works as a surgical technologist at Leahy Medical Center in Peabody. She believes the ward gets overlooked, but anytime there is development, the traffic on the ward suffers. She's asked whether West Gloucester, which also has an MBTA station, might be examined for a multifamily zoning district.
Joseph Orlando. Orlando served as both a Ward 3 councilor and councilor at large in the 1980s. He works as a night crew chief at Shaw's. Before that, he worked for a cell phone company. To quote him, he says, "I'm running because I've been in the community all of my life. I've watched the ward. I see the ward has not been represented that well lately. I feel I can do something for the ward." Regarding the MBTA communities issue, Orlando said there didn't seem to be room around the Railroad Avenue station for such a development. And he said more housing there could change the character of the whole area.
Here are the candidates for Ward 4. Note, current Ward 4 councilor Val Gilman is running for at-large councilor. Mary Pat DeRosa. DeRosa is a retired IT project manager who now works as a property manager for senior and low-income populations. She is running for Ward 4 councilor, to, quote, "because I want to strengthen our government so it's more responsive to residential needs." DeRosa objects to school consolidation and the development of public parcels or open spaces. She cited the new consolidated school, East Veterans Elementary School, as an unhappy fate she does not wish for Ward 4, home to 2 elementary schools.
Frank Margiotta. Current Ward 3 councilor, Margiotta won as a write-in candidate 2 years ago. He moved from Ward 3 to Ward 4 during his tenure. Margiotta has a background in restaurant management but works now as a farmer's truck manager for the Open Door. Margiotta considers, quote, "consolidation of schools a complex and sensitive issue that requires careful consideration of various factors. The performance of Plum Cove School academically certainly adds an additional layer to the decision-making process."
Ward 5. Sean Nolan's the incumbent and running unopposed. This is the only unopposed race in the 2023 election. Nolan was first elected to City Council in 2015 and is running for his 4th consecutive term. He's Vice President of City Council and Chair of the Ordinance and Administration Standing Committee. He is the owner and operator of Extreme Truck and Auto. His background includes participation in the Magnolia Lions, board member of Magnolia Library, and he has been involved and a member in the Freemasons and Shriners Hospital.
Finally, the race for school committee. There will be 7 people running for the 6 open school committee seats, with the mayor always acting as the 7th member of the board. What does the school committee do? It exercises control and management over the public schools. It appoints a superintendent, physicians and nurses, special ed director, and a business administrator. It furnishes all school buildings with proper fixtures, furnishings, and equipment, including for school grounds. The school committee submits their annual proposed budget to the mayor to include in the city budget, which will be approved by the city council. The mayor also serves on the committee with full power to vote, making 7 members. Let's meet the candidates running for school committee in the order they appear on the ballot. Note, Samantha Virga Watson is not running for re-election.
Jeremy McKean. McKean is running for school committee for the first time. He taught high school English in the city of Lynn since 2001. He's a member of the Lynn Teachers Union. He was a building representative for 7 years and then held a seat on the executive committee. He has worked with the AFL-CIO as a futures representative. He has taught at a vocational technical school. McKean has been part of the Gloucester Democratic City Committee, first as social media outreach and then as Ward 1 chair. McKean's 3 children attend Gloucester schools. He met Kurt Vonnegut Jr., who told him that, quote, "teaching was the most important job one can have in a democracy," unquote.
Keith Minio, incumbent. Minio is seeking a second term on the school committee. He was raised in Magnolia, moved to California, returned to raise his 2 children in the Gloucester public school system. He was concessions manager for Freight and Salvage Coffee House in Berkeley, California. He served as a teacher assistant and school purchaser for his child's cooperative preschool. He has worked as a lobsterman on his father's boat, as a sales associate at Cape Ann Lobsterman, and he has been an insurance agent. He is a single father.
Richard John Roberts Jr., incumbent. Roberts is seeking a second term on the school committee. He serves as a security officer for Beth Israel Lahey Hospital and a shift supervisor for Allied Universal. His 2 children attend Gloucester schools. Bullying is a serious concern for him. He is also concerned that Gloucester High School has an 86% graduation rate, below the state average of 93%. He's concerned about the looming cost of another school consolidation, should there be one.
Kathleen Clancy, incumbent. Clancy is chair of the school committee, running for an 8th term. In her tenure, she has been chair of the Building and Finance Subcommittee and has chaired the Programs Committee. She is a member of the East Gloucester Veteran School Building Committee and was previously on the West Parish Building Committee. Both projects successfully constructed new schools on time and on budget. Recently, the committee has added new windows to O'Malley School and new playgrounds at Beeman and Plum Cove elementary schools. New curricula and diverse learning opportunities are in place across the district, including expanding the career, technical, and vocational programs, a number of programs to improve mental health of students and their families, and a significant growth in the musical instrument participation. Kathleen Clancy has been active in the Gloucester Ed Foundation for many years. She has a degree in accounting and an MBA in finance. She's worked for over 20 years in that industry.
Melissa Joy Texera Prince, incumbent. Prince has been serving on the school committee for almost 16 years, or 8 terms. She was a member of the Essex Tech School Committee for 9 years. She's a chairperson to the school committee Building and Finance Subcommittee. Prince's recent time on the board has meant overseeing project initiatives including the new West Parish and East Veteran schools, a number of physical improvements to buildings, investment in new curriculum and targeted intervention programs. Prince has worked at the Gloucester District Court for the past 30 years, assisting local residents with matters of domestic violence, mental health, substance use, and criminal and civil matters. She has a grandchild who is attending her first year at Gloucester High.
Laura Wiesen, incumbent. Wiesen is running for her 3rd term on the school committee. She is chair of the Ad Hoc Communications Subcommittee and the Programs Subcommittee. Under this leadership, the schools implemented a new policy to encourage attendance, not punish absenteeism. She previously worked in television news and as a documentary producer. Her 2 children attend Gloucester schools.
William Melvin Jr., incumbent. Melvin is running for a 2nd term on school committee. He's lived in Gloucester for 30 years. He entered the Army after high school and has worked in industrial manufacturing for 35 years. He has campaigned in both elections on the principles of, quote, responsibility, opportunity, impact, and enthusiasm, unquote. His 3 children graduated from the Gloucester school system.
Basic voter information and deadlines for Gloucester's November 7th, 2023 municipal election. The polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Election Day. The deadline to register to vote or make changes to your voter registration for the municipal election is Friday, October 27th from 8:30 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. in the city clerk's office. The online voter registration deadline is October 27th at 11:59 p.m.
The city's clerk office is not required to mail to the voters an absentee ballot application or a vote-by-mail application for the municipal election. For voting absentee, voting by mail, military, and overseas voting, and for voters with disabilities, applications and instructions can be found on the city's elections website page, gloucester-ma.gov/337/elections. Applications are accepted via email, fax, regular mail, or hand-delivered to the city clerk's office at 2 Dale Avenue. The deadline to submit an absentee by mail or vote by mail ballot application for the election is Tuesday, October 31st at 5 p.m. The deadline for absentee ballot voting is Monday, November 6th at noon. Vote by mail and absentee ballots can be returned via parcel post, hand-delivered to the city clerk's office by the voter or family member only, or placed in the drop box located on the Warren Street entrance to City Hall. Please note the drop box will not be out in inclement weather. If you have any questions or would like to be a poll worker on election day, there is pay. Please contact the City Clerk's office at 978-281-9720 or email elections@gloucester-ma.gov.
Where do you vote in person on November 7th? Ward 1, Precincts 1 and 2, vote at the East Veterans Elementary School, 11 Webster Street. Ward 2, Precincts 1 and 2, they vote at Our Lady of Good Voyage Church Youth Center at 140 Prospect Street. Ward 3, Precincts 1 and 2, they vote at Gloucester High School, 32 Leslie O. Johnson Road. Ward 4, Precinct 1, votes at Beeman Memorial School at 138 Cherry Street. Ward 4, Precinct 2, votes at the Plum Cove School at 15 Hickory Street. Ward 5, Precinct 1, votes at the Magnolia Library Center at 1 Lexington Avenue. Ward 5, Precinct 2, votes at the West Parish Elementary School at 10 Concord Street.
This concludes 1623 Studios' Voter Guide to the 2023 Gloucester Municipal Election. Our election night coverage begins Tuesday, November 7th at 7 p.m. from Kairou's Auditorium at City Hall. We'll be joined by Gloucester Times reporter Ethan Foreman. When the polls close at 8 p.m., we'll have immediate results and reactions. In the meantime, you can watch all the candidate statements, interviews, election debates, and forums on Comcast Channel 6, as well as 1623 Studios' social media outlets. From all of us at 1623 Studios, we'll see you live on November 7th for full coverage of the 2023 Gloucester Municipal Election.